Get onto the internet.
Yeah.
You what?
Here, here's my, this is my email.
No, get back to your browser.
Like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, type in SolarValley.net.
Paste it. No, no. No, just Silicon Valley.
No, please go in. It's not nice.
It's gotten us all set up.
Okay, let's start over.
Okay,
We-
SolarValley.net.
Just about there. You tell me.
Calendar.
Okay, here we go. Ah, you know, I never saw it somehow. No, I never saw the. Oh, it wasn't a big- Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Recording.
All right. Good morning, everyone, to this October meeting of the Geologic Safety Committee. Before we open the meeting for discussion from people of the town, it's customary that we approve the minutes of the last meeting. So are there any comments about the minutes of the last meeting? And I'm sorry, but let me state first that I welcome the members of the committee who are here. Nan Shustak, Gary Ernst, Bob Ruckey, and I, Chet Ruckey, the chair. So it's time to think about the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any suggestions or changes for those minutes? Gary, do you have any? Nan?
No.
Bob? If there are no changes or suggestions, would somebody like to ask if we approve? All approving? Aye by voice. Any objections? The minutes are approved. Is there anybody in the town who wishes to have a communication with this committee about subjects that are not part of today's agenda? There seems to be nobody online with questions for us. Therefore, I think we can move into old business. Here's somebody. Good morning, Troy. We just introduced everybody to the committee, and we have talked about the minutes of the previous meeting. But since you're here, I will ask you if you have any comments or changes to the minutes of the last meeting. I hope you heard me. Do you have any suggestions about the minutes for the last meeting? Like we've already voted that the minutes stand. So it's time for old business. And the old business is our work on the town evacuation committee. What is it that we as a geologic safety committee want to suggest for that document that's all, a draft of which has already been worked up? I know that we have a subcommittee working on this subject. Nan, Gary, and Bob have been working on it. And I know that Nan has some suggestions today. So, Nan, do you wish to talk about your ideas?
Yeah, thank you, Chet. Yeah, I'm trying to pass out copies of the latest draft right now, so we can all look at it. So it'll be just a second.
All right.
And Troy, this is for you. So we have copies of the latest draft. This is yours. Okay, we have the copy of the latest draft of the
Let me ask you,
Yeah.
Nan, let me ask you, if I may interrupt.
yeah,
Is this just your draft or is this a committee draft?
this is a committee draft.
That every member of the committee has seen it and worked on it?
No, well, I have sent it out.
Every member of the subcommittee. is what I meant.
Subcommittee. There was wordsmithing after the last draft that was sent out, and just a few words and misspellings and things like that changed. So without exception, yes, everyone has seen it. And I think we're all on the same page here. So Bob and Gary, yes? Okay. So this is it's from the subcommittee. It's not from a single person. And it's the chapter that we are to contribute to the evacuation plan. The evacuation plan has a placeholder for seismic safety, basically, well, evacuation after an earthquake triggered wildfire. There's a place in the evacuation plan for that contingency. That's not been filled in. The evacuation plan itself has been passed by the evacuation, the EP, the Emergency Preparedness Committee, and has gone to the town council. Town council is now considering it. This chapter will have to be added after the fact. So in terms of process, I'd like to review this very quickly today, because if we go over it in detail, it's going to take forever, but just quickly give an overview. And at the next meeting, I'd like to have comments back, I guess, in advance if we can. I'm not sure quite how this works with the Brown Act Committee. Bob, do you have any idea?
An easy way to do that is to give a word version of the digital form of fact changes. Okay. Okay, what I'm suggesting is if all committee members receive the digital version of this report on Microsoft Word or DOC or DOCX.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, we could then make track changes and they could then all be collected together in one place in a final version written. Deciding on how many of the track changes are acceptable, and there's going to be a lot of overlap and differences. that doesn't mean we can't deal with. I mean, in fact, we can, once we have all that. But that is track changes, and if you are a different color, I chose red, then it's easy to see when you made track changes. On PDF versions, I can't make track changes. So I have to just scroll on the document. So I think track changes are better on the OCX. Right? What our community has done at this point. Project in the work. Had a chance at go through it. Seems to me like
Okay.
that we should present.
So you feel that at the November meeting, the subcommittee should be prepared to give the committee a sort of final draft, unless there are any other changes. I would like to be able to get some feedback from committee members, just not line editing or word by word, but just generally whether they think we've covered, whether we've covered everything adequately or whether we've gone into too much detail.
And let
So-
me make a suggestion. That is there a short executive summary at this stage of what the subcommittee has been doing?
Yeah.
Come up with.
Well, there's an executive summary of the document on the first page.
It's an entire first page.
The entire first page is the summary.
Sounds as though that's a bit lengthy for an executive summary.
Well, it may need shortening. That's the thing. There is probably more detail in here than we need. And we can shorten things, but it's better to start with more and then cut out than not have enough. So,
I should think,
Had another comment, which is different from my first one, but it's still the same sort of thing. We said, the man wrote that this document has been fleshed out. I think it's been over fleshed out. It needs a little defleshing, meaning we have to cut back. But I think the important thing is that this very comprehensive document as it stands now. I don't know what another version of looking at all the options would change anything. What we need to do now is take this document to a Turkish bath and sit there for a while and make it smaller, smallify this document. And I think we can do that as a committee of the whole. Everyone has their ideas, and we're not going to reach unanimity on every single word. Wordsmithing is like that. What we need to do is have someone be the straw boss, probably Nan, and tell us all what the final version should look like. And then we can meet, then at our next meeting, we can do that. But to me, I don't think we need another subcommittee meeting to go over the stuff we already have. We're only going to add things that we've forgotten. I don't think they're major, they're minor at this stage. This is a very comprehensive document, a little too comprehensive. And certainly the homeowners are going to want to see a boiled down executive summary. They'll not read anything else.
I concur that brevity is important.
But
I like
it's
that
good to
idea.
have all the data though. Because if anybody says, well, what about the electrical system in town hall? Well, we have a big whole section on that, folks. Help yourself. But we can do this, I think. I think we're almost done with this. And compared to the other parts of the document that the town has produced, I think ours stands up pretty well.
Yeah, I agree with Gary. We followed the outline that we presented to the committee at the last meeting. That was in August. And so this is a fleshed out version of the outline. And as Gary says, maybe too fleshed out, but that's okay. We can cut. There are a couple of places I found where we're overlapping with the evacuation plan document itself. So we need to read through the evacuation plan and read through this chapter and make sure that everything meshes. That's the next step, I think. But well, Gary's idea is to basically, I think, devote the next meeting to an editing session, a contribution session.
Yeah, I would suggest in the next session, we will already have more or less the final document in our hand. But there's always a chance for people to speak up later. And that's why we have so many committee members. But all the committee should do it their darndest to mollify certain parts of this that are semi-redundant, that sort of thing. And so that the next version, when we see, will be a somewhat slimmed down version. And yes, the executive summary does need to be the absolute slim as much as possible, but it has to have stern words in it. Because you need to not just get people's attention, but attack their full vision on what the Sam Hill we're up against here. Because if the roads go down, we're in big trouble if there's a fire, as an addition to an earthquake. It's just no small matter. Nobody likes to think of it.
Yeah, Gary's quite right. As the subcommittee members got further and further into this, we realized that this situation could very well be more dire than we had originally imagined. Just as one small example, we haven't finished the map. So that's one major thing we have to do. The map of the evacuation routes with fault crossings and now bridges, because bridges are vulnerable in an earthquake. And Bob has identified the bridges on Alpine Road and Portola Road. And so I've got a hand marked map, and there are more bridges than fault crossings. It's really quite, I shouldn't say scary, but it's very,
So there's some of the weakest points
yeah, exactly.
in the evacuation.
Yeah,
But I think one thing we have to make certain is we're not structural engineers or geoengineers. So we can't offer critical comments too much on the bridges other than to say they're the weak points that we have to worry about.
yeah, these are possible weak points. Yeah,
Yeah, possible weak points,
Yeah.
and some may stand up just fine.
Yeah.
But we're not engineers here, so we're not really
Mm.
authorized, I think, to make decisions about which ones are good and which ones are bad.
yeah, we can point out potential hazards. We can't point out.
That's right.
Yeah, yes. So, yeah, there's one thing I did want to mention, a couple of things. We're recommending a rapid response team. So this came out of discussions with we had a couple of visitors last meeting and took their comments very seriously. The rapid response team could grow out of the I don't know what you call it, the team of people who respond to fallen trees in the middle of the night. It's a volunteer team in the town. They work with the Public Works Committee. Yeah, it's Public Works, but there's a team of volunteers in the town. But with Public Works and these people, we could ask them, possibly, this is just an idea, ask them to become the rapid response team and be responsible for checking the roads, clearing the roads wherever possible, and making temporary repairs. And this is before anyone else can respond. We're talking about hours here after an earthquake. And the idea is if you have the fire, which is pretty common, especially in summer after an earthquake, well, could be in winter too, then you have to have the roads cleared if you're going to be able to evacuate 4,500 people. So the other thing is on page,
One more little item about the rapid response.
Yeah.
The picture that the Rockies present of Alpine Road south of the Portola crossing shows just what can happen, what happened in 1906, and it made the roads impassable for a modern day car. A mule, yeah, that's fine, but not a car. And that means we need somebody really fast, like the Seabees were in World War II. They're the rapid response that got things done in a hurry. Public works sounds like people doing a project, putting cones out and spending 10 days striping the road. You know, this is not, we need immediacy. That's the whole point that I think we're trying to make here, that the immediacy of this response is critical to making the roads again usable.
yeah, absolutely. And once again, we're talking about hours after an earthquake, in the first hours. We can't wait for the county to get here. We can't wait for Howard and his people to be, to come from other towns. We need people here on site, able and willing, trained and with equipment to be able to make the roads as passable as possible after a major earthquake.
Dire things.
Directly into the,
So, so earthquake plus wildfire, but again, if the ground is saturated at the time, we might get significant soil slips, ground failure, blocking roads as well. We're not only trying to smooth out broken ground from direct earthquake faulting or intense ground shaking, but also big slumps.
yeah, you're absolutely right. We did mention that you can have ground, we call it ground disruption. Could be ground failure.
Just thinking, I walk Upper Alpine Road a lot, and with this winter, there was some big slope failures.
Slope failure, yeah, landslides.
Highway
That-
84
that's
was a terrible problem for the people that live beyond it,
Yeah, without,
beyond it.
without shaking.
There's also a fairly long stretch of Alpine Road that goes across an area the USGS has mapped as being susceptible to liquefaction. So in that case, it could slump if it liquefies. If there's enough.
Yeah, I'm
traffic
just
on it.
thinking of equipment that can come and create, landslides off the roads. to let people out.
Exactly.
That's kind of a different
Yeah.
kind of equipment that I think will be required to kind of smooth over where the ground.
Well, if you had I don't want to say bulldozer, a loader, front end loader, maybe with a scoop, it might be able to do something, might be able to help with both situations, but smoothing roads and scraping off landslides. Yeah, the landslides, oh, you think that Alpine that there are incipient landslides on Alpine?
Upper Alpine,
I'm sorry?
Upper Alpine.
Upper
you know,
Alpine, yeah. Oh, definitely upper Alpine, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Right.
But it should be straightforward to map out where landslide susceptibility is. I mean, I
Okay,
think
so-
we already know that.
So that was an idea to put landslides and liquefaction on the maps. This map is getting more and more complicated, but I think we probably need to go back and do that. So we would have fault crossings, bridges, maybe in some places where you don't really have bridges, but just culvert crossings over streams. And then we'd have places that would be, could be impeded by landslides, and then we need the liquefaction area in Alpine Road to put everything on the map.
Yeah.
Do I have a copy in Word? Oh, yeah. It's only in Word, yeah. At the moment, no. I don't, okay. Mhm. Yeah, so I think the subcommittee will probably need to meet again to make as many changes as possible and to work on the map, because we're all going to need input on the map. And Mary, I have a question for you. Brown Act question. If we ask for committee members' input by email, this is private email, so that's the problem, on the document to the subcommittee, so that we can incorporate everything we can possibly incorporate before the next meeting. Is that a violation of the rules?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I thought. So,
So what's the solution for getting input?
Well, give her your input now and then have the subcommittee take it away and do what you think.
well then, but now,
Or-
then we're going to have a half-hour silent section of the meeting while people read through the document and react.
In your agenda. Put it in your agenda.
For next meeting?
Yeah,
Well, that was,
3 days. Yeah, almost a week to read it.
which we could do right now, except that this is the first time people have seen the document.
The subcommittee does one more iteration. That iteration goes into everyone. can look at it. Typically, the broader.
Yeah, and you've already come up with a whole bunch of great ideas. So you got lots of work to do.
And the,
Subcommittee does.
so the next version would be published in the agenda, which would come out
Yeah.
sometime the week before the meeting. So it doesn't give a lot of time to look over the document, but it may be enough
A
time.
week.
Yeah, make it. Try and put it in a week. That would be very soon in November.
Yeah. Okay.
I had a couple of comments. Is this a good time? I did come up with something. It's Bob Doyle. And his email is pubworks.com, COMM @portollovalley.net. And he's in charge of that rapid community response.
Ah,
So it seems like beefing that up would be nice, and he'd probably be honored to have a call or something from you guys. I don't have a phone number. I have two emails. The other is Bob Boyle, BOYLE 1 @gmail.com. And he's theoretically, at least when I last looked at this, he was chairman of the Community Public Works Outreach. So that was one thing. And then just on a quick reading, it seems like the 5th paragraph of the executive summary would take care of the entire executive summary.
Could take care of what? I'm sorry.
Could be your executive summary. And then all the rest would be part of your introduction. But that includes your rapid response team, that includes clearing and repairing of damage. It seemed like it included almost everything that you wanted to say with the teeth. Paragraph 5.
Yeah, you mean shorten to one paragraph?
Yeah, have the
Can be done.
executive summary be one paragraph so that you know that that's what you're talking about. And then the stuff about how maybe it won't burn, maybe it will burn, could be part of the body of the document.
So Mary, the Public Works Committee is Bob.
Boyle, but he's the volunteer person. And in fact, he did show up when we had our big flood. They came and they coordinated the fire and everybody. So he actually was there first before Howard or the town or anybody. So
He has an email to Portola Valley Mayor.
was that Portola Valley or was that? Did I say Portola Valley? Yeah, he has his very own. I mean, it looks like it anyway, so.
Mary, sorry, his Gmail address was Bob Boyle 1
Bob Boyle 1
@gmail.
@gmail, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that's not a missteer, but anyway,
It was-
there
okay.
is such a thing. It did work this winter. And so, and probably for earthquake, it would be good to have it beefed up. So, because they would be the one who'd end up going.
Yeah,
So they might as well have the broadened
Yeah.
expertise.
yeah. So I would like to reach out to Howard about once we get a draft of the map about especially about the bridges, make sure this is his understanding where they are. And now Bob Boyle, so that's a great lead. Thank you.
Okay.
very much. Wonderful. Yeah. Okay, there's on page 3, I have one correction that we need to make, otherwise it's going to throw you off when you read this. Scenario earthquakes, there are supposed to be 3. So there's a paragraph starting a damaging earthquake in Portola Valley. And then the next paragraph starts the 4 most likely. It should be 3. This is a problem with automatic numbering in Word. Okay, number 1, San Francisco type, 1906. Number 2 is not one of the scenarios. That's just detail for the 1906 scenario. In the next page, number 3 should be 2, 1838 type. And then, no, this is page 4. Number 3 should be number 2. Number 4 should be number 3. And if there's anyone in the public who would like a copy of this, then reach out to me, or reach out to the committee for a copy for this. Should be a public document at this point. Okay, on pages 3 and 4, you see that? So 2 is non-existent on page 3. Oh, you have something else?
Thoughts are here.
Or-
And I hope that in your wordsmithing, you give as much thought as you can to reducing the length of the document. You've already mentioned that, but I am emphasizing it myself. A lengthy document is very hard to handle. And here we're going to give it to another committee. So the shorter it is, the briefer and to the point it is, the better that committee will accept it. And everybody will benefit.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chet. I don't want to hand the Emergency Preparedness Committee a 13-page chapter for their 50-page document. Chapter on one very specific type of incident. And so we need to shorten it before we give it to them. One thing that the committee kept running up against in trying to write this document was there's so much we want to say about earthquakes and earthquake hazard and preparation for earthquakes and reactions to earthquakes. What should the town do afterwards? That we kept veering off into that instead of keeping just very narrowly keeping to the mission of addressing earthquake evacuation after earthquake triggered wildfires. There's so much we wanted to put in. There was a lot we put in and actually we've already taken out. But this committee is looking at developing a second document, which is more comprehensive, which is dealing with earthquake in Portola Valley. And that detail can go into that document. It should not be in this document. This should address
Or sweep it into an
evacuation.
appendix.
Mhm.
Sweep it into an appendix, right, the detail.
Oh, go ahead.
So the current assignment is providing about what ever evacuation by a field happen. There's also just in terms of earthquakes, there's what to do to survive in the town. Assuming that there is no fire, assuming that there is no separate documents. I see a lot of commonality. We would talk about the room and separate documents. But there's faster roads, roads will be damaged. So things that are in this document for kind of but right now we're just trying to provide enough set up fire. That's not the place to move forward.
Yeah, which may be actually the more important document to produce, more important information to get out to people. But the assignment right now is what to do if you need an evacuation for fire after an earthquake.
I like these ideas. It seems to me as though let's try to reduce the document that we are going to send to the evacuation committee to something that's terse, to the point, so that they can really use it easily. And pull out a lot of the good information that's in here for a document that is available for people in the town who want to know more about what to do or what might happen in an earthquake. I think that if we follow this kind of advice, we will be doing the town a great favor.
Okay. Good. Okay. So looks as if the subcommittee is going to need to meet, I think, another time. And we will get a document into the agenda and submit the agenda well in advance so that people can have as much time to read the document, which will be part of the agenda, as possible before the next meeting. And at the next meeting, we will set aside time to discuss the detail of the document. Because we won't have the advantage of of comments ahead of time because of the Brown Act. Okay. That's all good. Good.
It sounds
Yes, it
good
would.
to me.
Okay.
Any further comments on this?
Okay. So,
So we are passing the buck back to our subcommittee to do what it has suggested today. And we would look forward to hearing the subcommittee's conclusions at the next meeting. And that will certainly open the door to what we might want to include in a more extensive document that would be available for town people who want to know more about what the Geologic Safety Committee feels is that the citizens of this town should know about earthquakes and anything that has to do with evacuation or non-evacuation, whatever will help the people understand what an earthquake can do to this town. And we all know that there can be a severe earthquake. More likely there is going to be just an average one, whatever that means. And there certainly will be some small shakes. The town just needs to have some feeling about what these occasions can be like and what to do about them. Actually, there's a lot that people can do in this town and probably not aware of. They need to inspect their own properties to see how well they would hold up under a severe earthquake or even a very strong medium one. Do people know how to shut off their gas, for example, or what to do if their doors don't work very much anymore? What to do? I just think that this town knows very little about such things. There's been a lot of talk about these kinds of things in the past. The Citizens Committee has talked about these kinds of things. Somehow or other, I feel as though the ideas have never been properly summarized in a very terse way. 1, 2, 3, without a discussion. Just bring out the major facts and let people handle them as they can. It's up to the individual to know how to shut off the gas. We don't need to tell them very much about such things. Just that that's a problem. Turning off the water can be equally difficult for some people. So there's a lot that can be done in this town. And I certainly look forward to what the subcommittee will come up with for the next meeting. I commend the committee for coming up with as much as it has. But let me state once again what we've all talked about. Let's make this as what we turn into the evacuation committee should be very, very terse, very much to the point, with an executive summary that probably no more than a couple of short paragraphs.
Two questions I have. One is mapping out alternate evacuation routes. So say the road is broken up at the Alpine Patola Road intersection. With the Nathorst Road that kind of cuts around the back, would that be a viable route for people? And then also, you know, there's a road next to Family Farm that circles around and comes out further up Patola Road. Would that be a helpful route to kind of put on the map? And that's one. And then the other one is, I still worry about horses, evacuating horses, and wondering if the town could have an agreement, say with Piers Dairy to release horses onto the land. I mentioned to Nan, driving up towards Humboldt a few years ago, there was a fire along the east side of the road, and people walking their horses past the fire to evacuate. Yeah, it was not like a well-planned strategy of getting trailers put together and stuff. They're just walking the horses right by the fire. And you know, there was car control, right? One lane while the firefighters were trying to put it out. So I think all these plans are great, but I'm a big believer in backup plans. If it doesn't go right, you know, do we have another way we can on the fly make things work? Sure.
Yeah. Well, is it, yeah, those are really good points, Pat. Are these for the alternate evacuation routes, is the informal evacuation routes? At the last meeting, Jeff Alps mentioned that it's been difficult for the town to get agreements with some landowners, official agreements for evacuation through their land, but there
Yeah.
could be informal.
Well, these two are public roads. They're not private roads. The ones I mentioned.
Yeah,
But no,
that's
I
true.
agree
Yeah.
that with private roads, and there are like, you know, even people get up Windy Hill to the top or it's Fogarty. I think the two I mentioned are.
Pat, having brought up the idea of horses, that almost suggests that there should be a special evacuation plan for them, a separate one. I like the idea.
The evacuation plan does have provisions for evacuating horses. That's under the evacuation
Yeah,
plan?
that's
So-
under the evacuation plan. I don't think you guys really need to worry about it too much. Of course, all the large animal evacuation is set up at the horse park. So that is a designated location for large animals, and then they take them from there,
Wait,
wherever.
is set up for where?
Large animal, she was talking about the dairy
Yeah.
fields, and I think you were meaning the horse park.
Oh, the horse park. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the horse park, the large animal, I mean, we've done this, right? We did this in CZU. They evacuated all the, use the horse park as the place for all the equipment went, et cetera. So that's one place. The controversy, as you know, has been the Springdown Field, which they wanted to have as a place for the large animals to evacuate to as a staging place. So that, that whole deal broke down because of the fence that Carol wanted to put around that field so that that could be a free place. Nobody's going to release their horses at the dairy farm. You're going to have to, I mean, you're going to have to be there with your horse or turn it over to somebody. Here, there was an opportunity because they have 60 horses or something, 30, 60, I think, that they would want to release them so that if the barns were burning, you could actually release them without stopping traffic and then carry them from there. But that has failed. But we'll do.
Yeah. Let's see. The rapid response team was really the most important thing, I think. There are a couple of other ideas in here. Probably that people will pick up as they read. I don't think we need to talk about them. So I reiterate, if members of the public want copies of the document, contact me. Or some other member of the committee will get you a copy. Okay.
I may just make one comment here. I'm concerned that people talk about the need to make sure this is very comprehensive in terms of what do you do with your property, and how can you save things and do things that are to some extent engineering problems, how the structure of the house will behave in earthquake and things like that. But there were a variety of other things that we were urged to do at the same time, a clarion call to reduce the size of the paper. It seems like a rather difficult process. And we're conflating several things here. Earthquake, wildfire. An earthquake can cause a wildfire, but a wildfire can't cause an earthquake. But we have three different possibilities, each one separate or together. And it seems to me our current document has done a pretty good job of indicating them all together. You can say, well, we also need to talk about simply an earthquake, but we to talk about an earthquake and a fire after it, we have to have all the stuff on earthquake in it. So there is a logical reason, it seems to me, that this document that we have now has been constructed this way. Not all earthquakes are going to have fires associated with them, and certainly not all fires are going to have earthquakes with them. But we need all that material together in one place. Otherwise, we have to have three different documents. And I think really there's been some talk of that we should have three different documents. I think we really want to combine this because it is the composite problems that give us the difficulty. We can imagine any individual event as a serious problem, but to have several combined, wow, that increases the problem. That's what this document does as it is. And to me, that's the one that really carries the day. People are going to say, hey, smokes, we could have an earthquake and maybe even now that we'll be impeded to get it out, not just because of the earthquake, but because of the fire roaring around. You can going to stay pertinent in one area and that sort of thing. But I think we need to slim down this document, but I don't think we need to add a lot of engineering stuff to it because we're not very competent. We can say, yes, shut off your gas valves and water and that sort of thing. But once you've done that, you're kind of done. It's a geologic safety committee. So I would rather see a composite report that shows the possibilities with or without complexity, rather than three separate documents, which I fear is what we're sort of thinking about in the last analysis. And I think this one document does the best job of combining things.
Well, I was hoping that whatever we end up with this document, which will probably be shortened, will
Well,
be
yeah, let's
one
hope.
chapter in this
Yeah.
composite document.
That's right. But it won't repeat earthquakes again. I mean, as a separate item. This is the place to talk about earthquakes. Seems to me, because this is the new thing we bring. We're not a geologic committee of fire. Geologic committee of seismic problems and land slumpage and stuff like that.
So if we become too, if the document becomes too short, we have to eliminate a lot of the explanation about earthquakes.
Yeah,
But-
I don't think we have any danger of getting it too short because we're all invested in what we're writing about, and we want this because we want everybody to know what the problems are, and they'll find them right there. But I agree with Chet. We really need a boiled down abstract. It could be a little longer than the one Mary suggested, but it has to be short to get their attention. And then we can go into vast and terrible detail, and surely some will want to look more into it. But I favor the way we've conflated all these problems together, because they could act in an event, a real life event.
Yeah, at the same time, this has to be it should be a minor part of the the overall evacuation plan. So you don't want to overwhelm the document that already exists and is now being considered by the town council. So that's 50 pages. So do we give them, maybe we could give them 10 more pages. I'm thinking,
Yeah.
instead of
Well,
this 13 right now.
I'm for that. We're all.
9? Do I hear
Or
8?
do I hear 6?
What font size? Yeah.
We don't want to be too telegraphic.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on this?
The committee is going to look forward, I think, with great anticipation to what the subcommittee comes up with for our next meeting. I think a number of very good ideas have been expressed today. So let's bring them to fruition. It'll be fun to hear them. At least I hope it'll be fun.
Okay, there's just one last thing. There's a member of the public here. If we have to open this up to public comment. So if there are any comments, please raise your hand on Zoom or raise your hand in the room if you have any comments. No comment? Yes, comment. Okay, have to go to the mic. This is Troy. That's it.
I just would like to say that first things ought to be first. And the first 3 paragraphs of this document, I think, would kind of be inverted so that the lead statement is, it is not a matter of if, but when the next damaging earthquake will arrive. I think that's the most important thing to get through to the public.
That one sentence. Let's start with that. Okay, thank you.
I used to tell students at UCLA that very thing. It's not a question of if, but when. And then, and it may come at the very end of your life. They all put down their daily Bruin and say, what the hell did he say about my life?
Any other comments, questions regarding the evacuation plan? If not, we'll consider it completed for this meeting. I have a minor piece of old business for Mary. Mary, I have written to the council through you to see if we have finally gotten Floyd accepted as a full member of this committee. Can you respond?
Troy and I talked about it at the last meeting I was at 2 months ago. And I'm not sure that the form has ever been filled out that the town requests. Do you know, Nan? Troy, do you know? That you go online, you go onto the volunteers and you open up the form. And that seems to be, they got somebody onto the Parks and Rec committee without much trouble, because that form was filled out and because then they just slapped it into the council consent agenda. So that's the piece that I think we're missing. I brought it up a number of times, but I think, and now I think we need to just mention it to Florida, to our new town clerk, who's really wonderful, but overwhelmed. And she needs to put it on the next consent agenda for November. And we do need to be responsible about having filled out that form that's on the, and I think anybody can do it. I don't think Troy needs to do it. It can, I would talk to the town clerk and I would ask whether she's aware of it having been filled out. And if she says no, I would fill it out again and have it on the consent agenda for the next council meeting. Because yes, it has dragged out, but I think the reason is because they never got the official form. They got letters from all of them,
Well,
including me, several letters from me.
we'll look into this and do what we can. I wrote something that made Troy look as though he's God's gift to this committee. And so we want it approved. We want you on the committee.
Yes.
Any other items of old business? I guess we'll have to wait until Mary's finished talking.
Welcome to Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Okay.
What I've submitted to
Has to be. Okay, so the idea is to submit comments from probably Chet's letter through the official, through the website on the town, through as an official form to the town clerk. There's a place on the website where you can. Okay. We can do that. Thank you.
well, we'll keep working on this. We may get it finished someday. All I have done for Troy is what I have done for everybody else who's been appointed to this committee, and somehow things just haven't moved. So we'll continue to work on it. Any further items of old business? Are there any items of new business today?
Yeah,
Nan, do you have some items that you'd like to talk about?
the Barracal Fault zone. I've just passed out I have a handout, and if
Yeah,
anyone in the public would like a copy, then this will be available. Let's go through the maps one by one. The idea is that the Barracal Fault is really a zone. It's mapped by the USGS as going into Portola Valley, and it goes, if you can see on map 1, it's hard to print it a little dark, but at the top left is PV Town Center. So it goes not all the way to the town center. So the Paracal on the map, if you're looking at the map, is the dark blue line, and it goes diagonally across the whole map, almost down to Mount Madonna. That's the Paracal fault zone. It's a major thrust fault zone, sort of a secondary fault zone to the San Andreas. And it has created a lot of the topography, the hills and valleys we have on the San Francisco Peninsula. Major, major. The USGS has it in blue because it's supposed to be quaternary, but it's of uncertain recency, so they don't know, they don't commit to when it last ruptured. So we don't know whether it's considered active under the Alcatraz Act or not. It's a very long fault. On the map is a lighter blue fault, sort of aqua up near the top left. And that's the Black Mountain Fault, as John Casper Branner, who is the head of the geology department at Stanford, in around the turn of the last century, mapped it. He mapped it before the 1906 earthquake. Okay, the two don't completely coincide. In Portola Valley, they're very close in places. They absolutely coincide just south of Portola Valley or east. And Branner ends his Black Mountain Fault at the Baracal Fault Zone. Bob, if I know you haven't seen the maps, but turn to the second map. That's page 2. Flip the page. This is hard to read, but the yellow road going diagonally, you can see Portola Road and Alpine Road in yellow. Do you see, if you see the intersection? The Baracal goes right past that, and the Black Mountain is mapped as passing across Alpine Road, south of there. The two essentially coincide as they cross Foothills Park. Foothills Park. Okay, so
So the aqua is the Black Mountain?
the aqua is the Black Mountain. Would it help if I put this on the screen with the,
No,
no? Okay, the aqua is the Black Mountain. Yeah, there's a tiny little legend at the bottom. This is what Google Earth gives me. This was in Google Earth. The aqua is Black Mountain as I could trace it from the early maps, doing an overlay, so that may not be absolutely precise. The dark blue line is the USGS mapping as it comes into Google Earth. Okay. Yeah. Bob, do you want to talk about a little bit about the Black Mountain Fault? Directly into, yeah.
There's evidence that it wouldn't be.
That's a good point. I've shown the USGS mapping of the Baracal Fault. It is not on the town map, period, at all.
There's a picture with the man on the side of the road. There was a belief that that photograph that was printed here, on the left-hand side. That belief was so strong that people were aghast that velocity was error. It was wrong. But in fact, error was that people watched the clip. Bob and I have been working on this. We have a report that we are preparing. We can finish it someday. But we want to bring out this problem of the reversal, and we bring out in our current manuscript how much of an error that was. But it was an error that influenced lots of people to think that there was a fault that crossed Alpine Road in a place where we don't think it crossed. There's just, the geologic community is not in uniform about these kinds of things, and we're going to try to straighten things out. It's a difficult problem to do because Stanford professors were involved in this process of thinking the photograph of the man beside of the road should have been printed in reverse. They were convinced of that, and they convinced, and then there was a man in the Geologic, U.S. Geological Survey who also bought into that. The idea has been floating around for a long time. Needs to be clarified, and we're going to try to do that.
Yeah, that was the San Andreas fault, right? Your Chet was talking about the San Andreas? Yeah. Ah, okay. Okay, well, the fault predated the Lawson report. So flip to page 3. So Branner, so Bob, this is really your story. You discovered the maps.
Separately from fault. I'm not sure where you want, I'd like to know where you want to go.
Okay, so okay, what I wanted to do was, in the end, to decide whether, as a committee, we felt that the Barakel fault should be considered for inclusion, whether there's enough evidence that it was active in 1906 in this area, and it should be added to the town map. There's another issue, and that is that we're not commenting on a development, but at Hawthorne's, there's going to be an October 26th meeting of the committee that's basically going to decide where the trail is going to be placed. And the trail goes across the mapped Baracal and Black Mountain faults. They go right through the Hawthorns. And I would, if we think that there's enough evidence that there's been activity in the last, Holocene activity, then the committee should send a note to the Hawthorns Committee, Planning Committee, saying that we see evidence for this fault activity. It goes through the Hawthorns property. And in the future, if there is any consideration of putting infrastructure either above ground or below ground in that area, then there should be geotechnical investigations, simply that. But to do that, we need to come to agreement or not about, I mean, we would need to come to agreement on the recency of activity on the Barracal. So we're building up to that right now. Okay. That's the end point here of the discussion. Does the Barracal go on the map? Black Mountain, not sure. Barracal fault zone could go on the map. And should we notify the Hawthorns Planning Committee? Okay. All right, so I'm on page 3. And this was Branner's map of the, Santa Cruz, 30-minute Santa Cruz quad. The first mapping of the Santa Cruz quad. And it's hard to see on the left.
Founded. Who brought our attention. Branner made several photo albums. One of them is in the photo album. To Watson, which got buried in there. They finally discovered it in about 2012. And in that photo album, there is after from the left side of page 2. The right side of page 2 is part of details of what's in the whole valley. It shows what Brandon shows boards as far as where the center baseball is. Also shows fault to the intersection of that's the demo temporary map to the Barracal fault. Really got us on Barracal fault. Barracal fault. Barracal fault is on shown here, at least a small piece of it. In addition to what Branner maps on page 4 is notebook. Probably but he saw cracks in the road. So these two documents are footage of it. So that's evidence that there was infrastructure on the Barracal.
At Alpine and Portola. That's right.
So did Branner write a report to go with his map, or you just And it just went into Berkeley's archives.
And was lost for, buried for 100 years.
But nobody had paid any attention to these maps, or his Brenner's map. So we called it to their attention.
But did Turner have his map when he just went and looked at map damage, road? Right.
So, the earthquake is in April, school was shut down. Oh. There was evidence in his notebook that he had instructed about the.
Mercalli intensity scale.
What happened? Copy of that map is in. Yeah, that's what.
So was,
He didn't map, he just noted things.
but did his observations get folded into?
Into
The Lawson report?
okay, so there's that spot, the Portola and Alpine. There's another area, and it's on map on page 5. There was another person, I'm not sure whether it was a student, who walked the trail. Actually, it was a road at the time across Foothills Park. He said it was between Judge Allen's house, which is now the Hawthorne's, the old historic house on the Hawthorne's estate. That's a little green pin. You see the white line? That was the path that this guy walked, roughly. Okay. There was a road across down present day Los Trancas Road, and then the rest of Los Trancas Road I don't think existed as a major road. But then he crossed the creek and went along what's, I think, Coyote Trail in Foothills Park. And that was the long stretch of white. And then went to the Clarita Winery, or Clarita Vineyard, it should have been, which is across the street from the entrance to Foothills Park. So he walked this long, a few miles, a couple of miles, and recorded his observations. And his observations are on page 8. So the pages 7 and 8 are the relevant sections from the Lawson report on the Black Mountain Fault. So there was no Barrow-Cal fault in those days. They were just talking about Black Mountain Fault. But he didn't even mention Black Mountain Fault. This the guy who was walking, whose observations are recorded in the Lawson report, and who was walking this path, this white path on the map, and the map on page 5. So road from Judge Allen southward. This is on page 8. Between 3 and 4 miles southeast of Portola, many cracks were visible, extending in all directions. Several showed an uplift on the east or northeast side, downhill side. Some cracks were from 4 to 5 inches wide, had a vertical throw of nearly a foot. Other places, the downhill side had been thrust upward, and pieces of the crust shoved as much as 4 inches over the uphill side. Near the top of the ridge, just before reaching the point where the trail branches off, 4-inch crack, and he's going toward the entrance to Foothills Park. from near Alpine Road, okay? So just before the point where the trail branches off, a 4-inch crack running south 63 degrees east showed a 4-inch upthrow on the northeast downhill side, southwest of the ridge, and about 100 feet below the trail, an old landslide dating back to sometime within the past year, covers about 2 acres. Around this slide, the ground appeared to have been much cracked recently. And then he goes on. In some places, the crack was 2 feet wide. In other places, the ridge 3 feet high had been raised beside the road. And there were many parallel cracks within 50 feet of each side, up thrusts and down throws, some as much as 1.5 feet. Okay, so this is not what you find just at the bank of a creek if you're expecting subsidence because of the taking possible liquefaction. But this to me says there was substantial earth movement along the path this guy was taking. So he wasn't saying was, well, sometimes it was across the path, sometimes it was, he was looking at the hill.
Seems like he's describing thrust faulting.
Describing
Thrust faulting,
thrust faulting. Yeah.
so the shattering of the upper plate, and then he talks about 4 inches upthrow on top of the downhill side.
Yeah, and this is major earth movement that would be very destructive if the house were built. on
Thrust
this.
faulting.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you
thrust
built on
fault.
top.
That's right, exactly. It's, yes. You note that the dark blue line on map 5 and the light blue line on map 5 very nearly coincide there. So this is where the modern Barracal is mapped. And this is where the Black Mountain Fault is mapped, was mapped by Branner. And this is, you've read the description of what happened in 1906. The Lawson report tended to be a little conservative, so if they put this in, they were convinced that this really happened there. So, not at all. And this is Santa Clara Valley. This is just across the creek. Just, oh, yeah. Oh, yes, it does. Of course it does. Of course it does. It's continuous. So you've got this area that was active in 1906, at least this, just across the creek in Santa Clara Valley. You've got the point at this little section they looked at Alpine and Portola Road that moved in 1906. You connect the dots and you can assume that there was probably fault movement between the two, between the little, looking at the map on page 5. You've got the Branner's red mark from Alpine, along Alpine and Portola, and that's about the length of his mark. Turner's stop number 2, where he noted later in the year in 1906 that there were still ground cracks there, or there were new ground cracks. Maybe the road had been repaired and there was further fault movement. Jury suggested that. And you have this area where the two faults and the white line pretty much coincide. That was documented as having moved substantially, as Pat says, in the manner the thrust fault would in 1906. Okay, so if you go to map 6, to Mary's point, what happens in between? And this is an overlay of the Hawthorne's proposed trail map that they've made public over Google Earth with the faults mapped on it. And the green outline is the Hawthorne's. That is the Hawthorne's property. The orange dotted or dashed line is the trail map. And you can see where the faults go. So the questions for the committee are 2. One is whether there's sufficient evidence to make public a suggestion that the Barracal fault should be considered um, for the town's, as an active fault on the town's geologic map. And we would need to bring in the Cotton Shire's consultant for that, because Cotton Shire's is in charge of the map. So we would need to talk with them about that. And the second question, just really a separate one, is whether there is enough evidence to send a note from the committee to the Hawthorne's Planning Committee, PAWG, to tell them that there are faults in the area that could have been active in 1906. And should they consider putting any infrastructure in the area, then they should do geotechnical investigation first. Okay, so those are the two questions. Put the fault on the map or send something to Hawthorne's. Any thoughts?
Yes. Talking with the committee. Let's just send something to the.
We do, and there's an opportunity right now before the October 26th meeting for the towns, I omitted this, the town has an ad hoc Hawthorne's committee that is gathering comments from other committees, from all the committees. So most of the committees on the town are on that committee, but we are not. So we have not officially been asked to comment. But we can add our comment to theirs if we have a comment as a committee. Okay. And this would be the right time to do it if we're going to do it.
We want to submit something. What is it that we can submit? I assume it's something. Before to see the thing that thinking of doing is getting a trail, but fall. Problem also. Whether or not we can fail that. We're not doing. There's new information.
True.
My perspective, always better super urgent. Got to get done. How do we want two questions? What do we want to think? How do we approve it as a
Seems to me that all they need from us is a map and statement that we know that we believe that there are a couple of faults that cross that property. It's just simple as that. Let them do with that information as they wish. They can come back to us and ask for more information if they want it. We don't have an enormous amount of information yet on the faults across that property.
I don't know of any information on that, on faults on that property, because it's been in the hands of just two families for 120, 30, 40 years. And then finally just went to Midpen.
So there's no specific observations on Woods Estate.
Not that I know of.
Seems to me the first step is to put together a short report just summarizing all these observations from 1906 era and recommending that this fault be considered for putting on a map, and then everything else would kind of fall after that, wouldn't it? But I agree with Bob and Chet. It doesn't appear that they're planning any infrastructure that would require geotechnical report in the near future. We're just talking about putting in a parking lot and a trail.
Yeah, the parking lot is far, it's not on the faults. It's further
Yeah,
north,
yeah.
east.
They are property. So, but, so there doesn't seem to be urgency. So, but the more important thing is that, well, change plans, you change. You're changing the, so, you need to get some.
Now is a good time because they're listening to comments from Portola Valley. In the future, they will have their plans set and they're not even going to, I mean, basically the process is going to close. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. If you have a trail across the fault, okay, that's fine. If you, by that time, we may not be here and the information may be lost.
We have an obligation to the town to examine the terrain under our control and tell people if we believe there's good evidence, historical, topographic, and whatnot, that there are faults that are capable of being active because they were active in the past. We need to mention that in our report on an evacuation. After all, here's a couple of faults that aren't even on the map, and we suspect they are there. But for the committee dealing with the Hawthorne, we just say as a point of interest, these appear to be possible earthquake, these are possible earthquake structures. We cannot prove them. There's been no trenching, no detailed work, but it's clear that there is historical evidence that there that is probability, high probability that there are active faults in the area. And they need to know where we think they are for future reference. So we have an obligation to the town. That's what's tasked by the town to talk about earthquake hazards, and these are potential hazards. So we can just mention that in on our evacuation. And here's a couple that faults that are on the map that we think are.
And that's a good point.
They've asked each other. We
Yes.
need to committee, the Hawthorne committee, for their future reference. And they may say, well, anything now. And in the future, they'll want to put up a building or a visitor center or something like that. Then at least they will have the information. At least we've provided it. But
Yeah.
then the
The idea would need to give them enough documentation for their files so that they would be
Yeah,
responsible in the future.
It's got to be succinct and all, but it's a couple of references to the earlier work is about all you can do. But located where they appear to go through. Then we can't be sure exactly when you've got it located right anyway. So there's drilling done and trenching and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they may never have to do that.
One hopes that they would never have to do anything, but I can imagine that even if they didn't put any buildings on the surface, they could possibly put in electrical wire conduits and with electrical wires and drainage systems there, because there's a drainage problem near the boundary with Portola Valley Ranch, right there where the Black Mountain is mapped is going through. So I can imagine.
We have made our statement to both our residents who are want to evacuate if needed, and to the committee that is concerning development of the Hawthorne. So that we've done our job, and that's all we can do is speculate that there's a probability of the fault traces.
Okay, that's two separate.
Well,
Documents.
I would say make a sort of like a note, just as an example of faults that have not been mapped, or do not appear, or better to say, that do not appear in the current town geologic map, here from historic and topographic evidence to be very plausible fault traces. You could say that about in our evacuation report without more than a couple of sentences. You might want a few more words in that and let you tell the Hawthorne.
Okay, so yes,
Not much, because there isn't much. I mean, you've done the best you can, and it is because it's a geographic thing with a topographic relief over some distance is more than nothing.
okay, the question, okay. For the Hawthorns, are we going to send them something before the October 26th meeting, or do we want to wait? That's, it's
What would
it's
you
an
send
immediate
them
question.
exactly?
Pardon?
What are you envisioning sending to them?
I was envisioning sending something as short as a paragraph or two,
Should be enough, and a
plus-
copy of the map.
plus something like this map. Something
But also the text that you pulled out and these,
Well, do they want that? And we could say, if you want more information, contact us. I
so
mean,
just say that in 1906, all these observations of ground failure and ground slip, et cetera, were mapped in this area.
on both sides of the property.
And we speculate that there was movement on a subsidiary.
Okay. All right, so. All right, I'll get the exact word.
Pardon? I'm supposed to remember what I just said.
All right, so can we? All right, so this is. All right. So
If
you
we
wanna
send
say-
them something, it should have just brief text, and they should know that this is what we know now, that there is much that could be, that needs to be studied. We don't, the exact location of the Bear Cow Fault in the town is something that's not been worked out in detail at all. The Bear Cow Fault is something we know even less about, I think. They should just know that we are aware that there are these two faults that cross their property, period. There's much more that can be done in the future, and we don't know when it will be done.
Can we appoint a subcommittee of a couple of people to write the statement and send them out? Could you
And
do it?
what's the timeframe?
Pardon?
When do we need it by, finish by? It's like next week or something?
Before the 26th.
Okay.
You do that? I'd be willing to work with you because I've got the Google Maps.
Yeah, you've got all the good.
Okay, and Bob, do you want to be part of that?
I think, Nan, you're the one who's done this. Why don't you work up something very simple?
Bob got this whole thing started with the discussion of the Black Mountain Fault, and then I started looking at the Lawson report, and then this whole thing sort of came together.
Man, you should at least send it to Bob for review.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay, then-
Does the Brown
well, we can
allow
do,
us to do that?
so we. You want to be involved? No. Well, he's not on the commission. yet. He can be involved.
Yeah, and Bob's got a lot on his plate.
Yeah. And map for the Hawthorns. So, and Troy, you're volunteered?
No.
Yeah, no, to work. Oh, he can work on it. Okay. Just see if it makes sense. I mean,
But not bogging down.
okay. Subcommittee of two.
Yeah.
That and I'll do. Okay. All right.
Aside, the fact that we don't have a fully second.
So is there, are we ready for a motion? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, there's this idea that you want to send. What? You're asking for subcommittee to write paragraph. And the question is, committee want to entrust a subcommittee to write the paragraph, and paragraph needs to be approved by the committee. Approved by the committee. By the way, or we just don't keep that October 25th deadline.
That's correct. So,
From my perspective, that's urgent because the issue is we want to head off something that's urgent. Not going to change what they're planning to do and they're trying to get done now. All we're trying to do is put a trail across what we think is important. And what we want to do next time will be years from now. In October 25th, we stop something that we haven't thought of. But we do need the obligation to let them know.
Good point. Let the record show.
So
We can
here's the
do that
question.
in the next meeting.
Right, official way. October.
okay.
So prepare a draft for the next project
I
safety
I
committee
think that
meeting that people can.
preparing
and
something
vote.
for the next meeting is probably the most efficient way to go.
Okay, we will
Something
miss
simple.
the October 26th
Yes.
meeting for the major planning committee, at which things are going to be set, but we're not commenting on any of their development plans. We're not commenting on the trail or the parking lot or anything else. We're not doing that. They're going to have meeting in December and then a final meeting maybe in February. So there will be time to get a comment in. The time they would pay most attention to it is now. But we can still get a comment in. Okay, if we think that it's appropriate. So the first question is whether the committee thinks that there is enough evidence to tell them that they're, I don't know how you want to put it, maybe faults, active faults across the property. Pardon?
Probable. We
Probable.
don't know for sure about a lot of things, and this is a probable.
That's right. It is a probability, both cases.
Okay, we'll have to work that out. But, okay, so then the second question is, first is what exactly what to say. Second is, I mean, do we want to say something to them? My sense is that the committee feels there's enough evidence to consider the possibility that this thing, the Barakel, may have been active in 1906, in which case it's actually under the Altus Bill Act. So
It will require no action on their part. They just receives it. They just receive it. We're not asking something serious that is going to influence life for them. We're just letting them know how the land lies there, so to speak.
that's right. But what it does is what that would do is make the first statement on the Barakel, which is not on the town map. So that would lead to a discussion about whether it should in fact be on the town map. And that would involve Cottonshire. Mary?
I had just a couple of things. Would it make sense for you to just send a quick email to the town Hawthorne's committee chair that you can discuss it today and that you'll have this by December?
I've already talked to her.
Okay, so that's done, and then but tell her in writing on an email that it would that you'll have a statement by December,
Okay.
so that she can pass that on to MROSD, and so there will be nothing really official. It'll just be sort of a heads up, it's coming. That was one thing I thought, and then I wanted to, before you adjourn, I wanted to make sure that I captured this sense of this for my report, which is on Wednesday on this meeting for the town council, which was about your evacuation. I don't need it. We've gone over that well enough. That the current document is excellent, but too long. Potential executive summary of 2 paragraphs. Geologic mapping, should the Barakel fault map or the Black Mountain fault be added to the town geologic map? The Barakel fault was active in 1906. They would like to discuss this with the town's geologist. My favorite harping on question. These faults are not close to current housing plans. The desire is that the town geological maps are up to date and accurate. The Lawson report of 1908 was discussed and showed thrust faults. In particular, these faults cross the Hawthorns in areas where no buildings are being considered. The GCS would like to be sure that the Hawthorne Committee be informed about the geological elements in that area to help MROSD with planning. Pat and Nan are appointed to write the comment and send it in to MROSD and the town Hawthorne Committee. The October 25th deadline was discussed, and it was agreed that it would not be possible to meet that deadline. And then I said about Troy, and I, made that point, and I will make that on Wednesday in public after I clear the clerk. Is that more or less accurate? Did I
Yeah,
say something wrong? Geologically incorrect?
Yeah, GSC, not GCS. Yeah, it is. Do we need any, we need I guess we don't need any motions. We will just continue until the next meeting, the discussion. Oh, for the subcommittee, okay. So I
So
move
moved.
that, oh, someone moved, someone else moved.
Moved it.
Pardon?
That's, I said, so moved.
That Pat,
Committee should be established to deal with the faults, which I would say had not have moved in 1906, just because there's, until we have proof positive and everybody puts it on the map, it's an interpretation. I think it's a logical interpretation.
yeah, there were observations of movement in 1906. Yeah, yeah.
Huh? Second,
Well, wait a minute, hold it. What subcommittee are you talking about the subcommittee that we already have? You want to? Yes? And who do you propose to be on this new subcommittee?
Separate subcommittee.
Pardon?
Pat, do you want to call? That's fine. Or I can just hand over what I have to someone else and someone else could do it.
I have to leave in 5 minutes. I don't have a car. I have a ride plane.
Yes, that's,
Pat and Nan.
oh,
Pat and
and
Nan are
then-
going to write
that's
the
fine.
program.
That doesn't matter. That's fine. I like that idea. Nan's already put in some time on this. Let her help finish it off. So, shall we, let's vote on whether or not we want Pat and Nan to be a subcommittee to study this problem for the open space committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous, the motion carries. So thank you,
Okay.
Nan and Pat, in doing this.
And thank Bob for opening the question with his investigation of this Black Mountain fault that no one had ever heard of. That's amazing.
Look at that, and include a picture of the fault that's been. Do I have a picture of? So, town on.
Wow.
This is at Portola and Alpine. Exactly where Brander's red slash was, but just in one spot, not along the entire slash. His slash indicated that he saw movement for that entire length, which does actually go into the Hawthorns. But
There's
Okay.
limited aid infrastructure. Roads and stuff.
yeah, that's it. Mary, did you?
We should agendize elections of officers,
Did you what?
the annual election of officers.
Okay, you want to do that? And usually it's done at the turn of the year, right? Okay. All right. Do we need a motion for that? No, okay.
I have one minor piece of new business. I want to suggest, I have been the one, I was secretary for this committee for decades. And nobody ever wanted the committee meeting, the results of the meetings to be more than one page. So I would like to propose that we try to make all future committee minutes of the meeting to be one page or so. It's not a requirement, but a suggestion that one page, maybe at most two, is plenty so that we can get our ideas across very succinctly. We don't need to go into great detail because the minutes are not likely to be used very much in the future, but they are required and they are necessary and they should be written, but very briefly. That's my statement.
Okay. I understand that our minutes are very long. I have two thoughts. One is when I look back at the minutes from past meetings years back, I want more detail. Okay, I need more detail. I wish there had been more detail. And some of the people who were in the meetings are no longer with us. And the second thought is I'd like to hear from Pat and Bob, who have been taking the minutes, and see what they think.
Did not mention earlier, as I probably should have, but I wanted to ask Pat if you're willing to write the minutes for this meeting.
Yeah, I meant to grab Bob before it started.
And Bob already has recorded the minutes. We recorded the meeting.
Accessible to him. But I've been taking notes.
As far as I can see, this committee has had a very good meeting. Much has been determined. Is there a suggestion that the committee end this meeting?
Yeah,
Is there, that's,
I second the motion. I second.
everybody's for it?
Okay,
Unanimous, the meeting is adjourned.
it's noon,
It's just
12
about 12
o'clock.
o'clock on the button.
Good for you. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. I think it's been a nice meeting. We've accomplished a lot, I believe, and there's much yet to be done. And we will proceed to do it.